Hello to another video, and today we will be talking about how to choose your champion in Legends of Runeterra. First of all, I really like this game and I don't want to play Path of Champions. We're so close there. We're about a month away before we get any more news or at least a deadline. So with that being said, I want to help new people come into the game, so when the update comes out, you'll be able to have this video as a way to guide you into the world of Legends of Runeterra. If you are coming from League of Legends or you're coming from all the other Riot game, this is a card game, and so it acts a little bit different. And so one of the things about card games is, depending on how people code the game, it can be very simple or it can be really complex. And I think Legends of Runeterra fits closer to the more complex games, not in the basic mechanics, but in all the sort of variety that you have. And there's just so many champions. And so when people first come in, not only do they think about, okay, what do I need in order for me to get into the game? How many cards do I need? Which champions are the best? And instead of me talking about the metagame on competitive, I rather just think about an overall umbrella on how you can come up with your Legends of Runeterra champions. So let's get into it. I want to do a little guide. Here's a little PowerPoint I made. How to choose your Legends of Runeterra champion. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to discuss your playstyle. And not only do I mean playstyle, but I also mean the champion playstyle. For example, some champions lead themselves to be a lot more flexible. That's someone like Mr. Aphelios right here, whose use of moon weapons make everything really diverse, and you can play a certain way, as in terms of a more aggressive or more control, and we'll talk about those words in a little bit. Other champions right here, like Elise, play a very niche role. They don't really have that much flexibility in their gameplay. Not that doesn't mean that it's a boring champion or necessarily a bad champion. It just means that it's very hard for you to use this in several decks. Now, do you want to be a champion specialist by using a lot of Elise, a lot more aggressive champions, or do you want to be something more of a flexible thing like an Aphelios, where you're really trying to get the right champion, right? We can always talk about regions, which regions have the better cards right now, or which regions have the more useful cards, anything like that. But for now, let's just talk about the champions. And so for my last slide is, what champions playstyles are there? There are quite a bit, but instead of me talking about the keywords like, well, there's Lurk and there's Frostbite and there's Elusive, I try to come up, or think about this right now. There are 84 champions, and with the new expansion, there's probably going to be 90, right? Which means we're getting close to 100 champions, each of them having this kind of unique blend to themselves. And instead of me trying to think about it in terms of, let's talk about what Lurk is, and let's talk about what Tough and Overwhelm, all those, I am thinking of this overall. If you're a card player, these are more words that you've heard before, and some are kind of blended in with Legends of Runeterra, and these are also words that will help you out a little bit more on how you can think about this this kind of game, right? So if you're new to card games, these are words that will most likely pop up. There are a few that don't necessarily work for all games, but it works here. So the first one is aggressive. Some champions are very aggressive. We can even talk about those champions later, but some champions are a more aggressive playstyle. Other champions, what aggressive means is they can burn and try to win as fast as possible, dealing as much direct damage to the Nexus. That's how you win the game. Or they're trying to overwhelm you with small but very hard-hitting units to try and overwhelm you with their ability to go into these wide boards that just attack you, and there's no way you can keep up with your deck because you have little units, right? And then there is another one called control. A lot of people think these two are the opposite of each other. They're not. I just happen to think about them in this order. Control deck is a little bit more about making sure that your field has more power than theirs. That doesn't mean just attack power. That means being able to kill their units, using a lot of things like quick attack, keywords like that, or making sure your units are able to survive, being able to remove key parts of the units. Of your opponent's units while being able to secure yours, being able to create spells or other units that can then be used kind of like to chump block, which just means to block more powerful units or to wear them down. That's usually what control means. So there's a lot of killing spells in there. There's a lot of units that are able to survive a lot of damage, right? That's usually what a control deck means. Enlightenment, another word that people use in card games, are called ramp, R-A-M-P, ramp. And what this means is they have a very slow start of the game. And as the game progresses, their power and their cards are slowly getting stronger. That doesn't mean a single card is getting stronger. That means that the cards they start playing, because they are so powerful, you cannot play them in the beginning of the game. They cost too much mana or energy, if you want to think about it that way. It takes too many resources to play these cards, but the more that the game progresses, the more you cannot keep up, because your deck was not designed to be able to block these insanely powerful cards. That's what Enlightenment means. Another way to think about that is ramp decks, and they're usually sacrificed the early game with a lot of control cards in order for them to stall out the game until then they can go with these super powerful cards. The next one is value. Value, maybe I should be giving out examples of this, right? Aggressive is like burn decks, right? Control at this moment is darkness. Enlightenment right now is a lot of failure cards, which is like a lot of getting more mana gems instead of doing your turn, stuff like that. Value is what is being the top thing right now. A lot of value decks are in the top, and that usually means Yordles. That's what it is in Legends of Runeterra right now. But value in a deck is more about cards that create more cards, and so you're infinitely making these really good cards that, even though they might not be the strongest in terms of physical strength, or maybe they're not the strongest in terms of how well they can handle the board, the idea of that is you have a lot of these throwaway cards that you can use to slowly chip away at the enemy's defenses, right? But you never seem to run out of value. One card can create another card, so you didn't really lose any cards, right? Any card advantage. Or maybe another thing is it creates two cards, so you actually end up getting an extra card for that, right? Sometimes value can even mean that you temporarily disable their stuff, the opponent's stuff, and they cannot regain back their speed to try and overpower your often little units. Champion heavy decks or champion heavy playstyles means that you build this deck around this very specific champion. These decks are usually very fragile and require you to play really well. Things like Fiora, Yasuo, those are very champion heavy decks. And what happens here is that you have to have very good consistency. You have to make sure that you're drawing correctly, and that you're able to protect your units, but most likely your champion. This could be something that you build up to, kind of like a Lee Sin, that once the champion drops, now the game is starting to roll super fast for the opponents. You want to make sure you get rid of the champions, or you make sure you're able to beat them before the champion is able to go to its full potential, right? Engine heavy deck is somewhat of the reciprocal of that. Engine heavy decks don't rely on the champions, or maybe the champions help get the deck moving. Things like Zillion is a very good example of that. Things like Echo are very good examples. What they do is they create, if you don't draw them throughout the whole game, you can still win. But this engine heavy deck relies on units kind of helping each other out, making sure that they're always kind of making value, right? They can control the field, but they're more based around like a specific play style that Maybe it's a little bit more tough, kind of like Jinx. Jinx is another example because her engine is more about drawing out the deck and making sure that um, you get the right combo pieces to win. Speaking of that, that is another one called combo. Usually combos are things that you're kind of, you're getting the right cards in your hand, and then when you feel like you have a safe enough approach, you go in. Maybe it's not super safe, maybe it is an aggressive play style, but you know that you put out your cards and it becomes really tough for them to deal with that one turn, so much that they lose a lot of their resources. It's hard for them to keep up, so the next time you draw maybe a second mini combo in there, you use it and you're really slow, starting to overpower the units. This usually deals with a lot of drawing, a lot of patience in this kind of deck. Now, before I finish into the last one, Snowball, I do want to say that there is no champion that is only one of these, right? Most of the time, champions are maybe 2 or 3 of these, but there are some champions that are obviously more. There's one like Fiora. Fiora is not an aggressive deck. It doesn't really do control that well. Enlightenment isn't this, you don't want to play to the end game with Fiora. The value's not really there. She's more of a champion heavy / engine heavy, but mostly champion heavy, right? There's a lot of different play styles. Like I said, I try to condense all 84 champions into 8 descriptive words, right? So there's gonna be overlap on all of them. But with that being said, this is the final one, the Snowball. So what that means is it's not necessarily your champion, but it's the deck that you build around that starts small. But if the opponent isn't dealing anything with your initial board, it gets a little bit stronger, and then the next turn gets a little bit stronger and a little bit stronger, until once you really have your full board there, the opponent doesn't even know where to block or what to do against it. They're running out of resources. They can't really overpower you. That's usually a Snowball deck. Great example is the Faded keyword. Things like Pantheon is a very good Snowball champion, right? I would even say something like Aurelian Soul is a very good Snowball champion, because the very initial board is somewhat weak, but if you don't stop it, it slowly gets even stronger and stronger. That's not necessarily the same thing as value, but it rings similar things on. At some point, the enemy cannot overtake how much good effects and units you have. Okay, with that being said, this is the end of my little thing. We are gonna create a little tier list on these champions, and we can go ahead and see which ones you prefer. The most adaptable, so this is easy to learn, easy to play, right? And then it's going to go here until this becomes basically playable. Not because it's good or because it's like a strong deck. It's more about the fact that it's going to be really difficult for you to jump in, right? So maybe beginner friendly all the way up to like you really got to know how to play the game. And so we're going to start with a champion. Let me see, can I get the first one? Garen. Garen is a very easy champion to work with. His playstyle is a little bit more of a control / snowball champion, and so that's kind of what you'll see. I think that if you're first starting off, Garen's a very good place to start. His keywords aren't too difficult. You get to understand the play styles. I would say that if you want to learn how to play Path of Champions and you need some champions, not necessarily to play ranked, just for you to kind of understand the game, maybe get into some ranked, I would say Garen is probably an A tier. In terms of what it's like right now in the current meta, what I mean by that is based on what decks are the most prominent right now, I wouldn't necessarily say Garen is the best to start with, but in terms of you learning the game, I would say you can pick up Garen. Next champion is Lucian. Lucian is a little bit more aggressive and a little bit more combo heavy, and so I will put him maybe here, and I'll be moving things around in the video as the video progresses. But I would say that he is more of the a little bit tougher to understand. It's not that his playstyle is more difficult; it's just that it does get a little tough for people to really play the deck correctly. All right, let's see. Next champion, Lux. I would say Lux is probably one of the easiest to come by, the easiest type of champion. In fact, because of that, I am willing to say that Lux is actually in the easy tier. I think that if you pick up Lux, not only is she pretty decent in the metagame right now, not necessarily like the best, but she's pretty. You can make some pretty good decks with Lux. Her engine is really easy to understand. You just need to spend mana on spells for you to understand how to play her. Her level up is a little bit tougher because she is a 5-drop, which means that you're going to be playing her like in the middle of the game. And you do want to wait it out a little bit. You got to learn when to put her, but once you place her on the field, the goal is simple: waste some spell mana, start destroying the field, right? I think Lux is a very good place to start, and her spells are the same spells as Garen, so you can definitely start there. Next one, Fiora. I would say Fiora is one of the harder champions for you to play. She is very champion heavy. You got to learn how to control the field, while know when to use certain cards, when not to, when to take damage on the field. I would say Fiora is a very difficult champion to play with, and I don't really recommend playing with her in the beginning. Braum right now, I would even say Braum is a pretty I would say Braum is a pretty easy character for you to get into. The use of him having Challenger and Regeneration makes him a very difficult champion to lose. He opens you up to the Failure region, which has a lot of really good cards there anyway. So I would say Braum is a very good one. It also, not only is he a very somewhat champion heavy build, but he also creates a control slash engine heavy deck, and so he's very versatile on what he can do. Can you play him aggressively? Not fully, but you can play him in all different other types of decks, which make him a very good versatile first champion for you to pick up. Anivia, I would say Anivia is a little easier to play than Fiora, but still very difficult to play. So I would say maybe this is just hard. The reason why is because you got to get Anivia to go all the way up to the last mana gem. So you have to go 10 turns without losing. And although that might seem hard, there are some decks that you can get started with Anivia that make it a little bit easy. In fact, right now in the metagame, I would say Anivia's a bit there. Like if you start playing her, I think you can do well in the early ladder. However, Anivia's been one of those champions that's a little bit tough to master, especially as a beginner. Ashe, I would say Ashe is somewhere also in the hard tier. Her engine itself is pretty easy. It reduces the attacks. It's called Frostbite, but it reduces the attacks of enemy units to 0. And so while it is a little bit more of an engine heavy deck, it does require some combos that you need to remember, like when to use the Frostbite on what units, and when is it good to use it on a unit that's going to deal 5 damage, whereas taking that damage now and then using the Frostbite offensively gets a little bit tough. So I would say Ashe goes in hard. Tryndamere is one that's very much like Anivia. You really got to wait until the very end of the game. There's some good decks around it, but I would say to first begin, I don't think he's that good of a champion. He's very good at the late game, but in the beginning, not that good. Zed is a very good starter for an aggressive playstyle. Can you play him in any other kind of decks? I would say that's why he's somewhere right here. He's kind of a bit of a, like, maybe we can call this the second champ. This is good for a second champ. Once you kind of understand how the game is working, maybe you can pick up Zed. Maybe you can pick up Lucian as well. So I think that's how you can start thinking about it. Zed is a very good champion. He's very aggressive, and very combo oriented, and so that's why I think he would be good for once you kind of understand the mechanics. But for now, maybe you can wait off on getting Zed. Yasuo, I would say Yasuo is a very hard um, champion to learn because his playstyle is very easy, but because it's so engine heavy, by that I mean you gotta get stuns, you gotta find ways to keep Yasuo alive. So it not only is it engine heavy, it's also champion heavy. It's also very combo based, and at the very end of the day, it's not really that good of a champion. I would say he's very hard, almost teetering to unplayable. The reason why I say that he isn't unplayable is for the main fact that it's not Fiora, whereas Fiora has to stay alive. At least Yasuo, you can kind of use him as something else. I wouldn't recommend him as your first champion because you really need a lot of those cards. So you need to grind to get his cards so he can be good. Shen, I would say Shen is more of a second champ. I think he's more of a value kind of card. He's able to create barriers that save your units. And so I think he's a very good second champion. But in terms of, he kind of falls in the same like Yasuo thing where you kind of need a few cards for him to get the thing rolling. And usually those cards are in like the rare and epic tier. And so I really wouldn't suggest getting Shen as your first champion. But, you know, maybe along the lines you can definitely get Shen. Karma, I think Karma is one of the more easy beginner I mean one of the more beginner ramp combos. Remember that means that you want to go all the way to the end of the game, and then once you do that you're able to get started. So if you like those patient plays where you're trying to learn how to get to the end of the game and then play it, I would say Karma is a very good one for that, because once you get her, it's really hard to lose. But I think maybe getting the second champ, only because she would fall actually somewhere between the A and the second champ. So I'm actually gonna put her in the front. Wait, can I do that? Yes, I can. I would put her somewhere in the front of being the second champ. She's a very good one once you start getting enough cards and once you kind of understand the game a little bit more. Vladimir, I would put him. This Vladimir is more of a combo. You have to have certain units on the board for it to start working. However, the units on themselves work really well without Vladimir on the board. So I would even put him on the Garen. I think he's a very good beginner champion. To kind of start understanding how it works. You start seeing that a lot of the chunkier, more value-ridden, mid-range, you might not hear these words before, but just know that the champions in the top are usually the ones that kind of play like a good offensive and defensive strategy, and I think that's good for your first champion. Draven, just to completely counteract that, I think Draven is a very beginner-friendly but strong champion. It gives you axes, which increase the attack of your units. He himself is not necessarily a champion heavy deck, but he creates a very good engine of discarding and getting card value that once you start getting those cards, Draven, it does really good job. It's also aggressive, and he doesn't have too many crazy like play styles, that you can learn how to play an aggressive deck with Draven. I think he's a very good play candidate for that. Darius, I would say, man, Darius, although it is a somewhat easy to understand concept, I think that maybe it gets a little too hard. I think there are champions that do things better than him and that also live in the same region as Darius. He doesn't really get you a lot of value. He's more of a ramp deck where once it gets to the late game, he's really starting to attack. But he isn't really necessarily played as a ramp champion. He's more played as a very aggressive one. He's gonna be like the last hit to your aggressive to end that aggressive play style. And so that's why I say he's kind of hard to play. He feels like he should be an end of game champion, but he's not. But he's usually played in a beginner in a very aggressive deck. So I would put him, you know, he's a little tougher to understand. So I would put him there. Katarina, In terms of how she plays in the metagame right now, she is not that good. And in terms of how you're supposed to play her, I would say she's one of the more unplayable champions, unfortunately. Uh, Her strategy is to strike, goes back to your hand, and every time you summon her, you can engage on a full attack with the opponent. Uh, but this has you try to come up with saving your units, making sure to keep her alive, but at the same time, you know that you're losing a lot of your engine when she comes back into your hand. So now you have to rebuild your board for her to summon, and so it gets a little bit difficult to understand as a first player. I would say if you want to have a better idea of like a more like battle offensive deck, you can choose Garen, and he'll kind of fit the same mold and still be a little easier to understand and learn the mechanics. Teemo, I would say he is a very easy to understand um, champion. His thing is just to build as much mushrooms as possible. He is a very snowball. He's a very like, so this guy works as a very aggressive and snowball because he's gaining all these mushrooms that once you draw cards with mushrooms, they deal direct damage to your health. And so you're able to lose. I think he's a very good place because he has access to getting cards from 2 different regions. He's elusive, which is a keyword that we use in Legends of Runeterra. So I think he's a very good, he's like a good overall aggressive champion. Like he kind of does everything decently well in the aggressive area, dealing direct damage, having units that are just create value for you, stuff like that. I think Teemo is a very good starter champion. In fact, now that I'm talking about it, maybe Teemo goes here. Ezreal, I think Ezreal is a very good thing for your first champion. I think the use of elusive is very good. I think that his thing about targeting units is not that difficult to understand. I think that he also gets a good region, which is very beginner friendly, which is Piltover and Zaun. So I think he goes here. And I'm going to try to speed this up just so we can try to get through this. Jinx is a very glass cannon deck, very very discard heavy. You're trying to go through this region, so I would say if you really want to play Jinx, I would put her as second champ. I would even put her on one of the easier but harder champions to go, because you're trying to discard your hand and you have to learn how to do that properly with Jinx. So I would say maybe she goes in the hard slash second champ area. Heimerdinger, you can definitely start with just Heimerdinger. I think he creates his own value. So not only is it champion heavy in terms of if you can keep Heimerdinger alive, he gives out so much value, right? And I think this is a very good beginner's guide to a control deck. Kalista, very combo heavy. You kind of need the right cards with Kalista. I would definitely put Kalista in the hard category just because you really need a deck that has very good cards for Kalista to kind of shine. Hecarim, I would say Hecarim is kind of in the same boat as Kalista. You kind of need these combo cards. They're not that difficult, so it's a little bit easier than Kalista, but I would say Hecarim is also kind of difficult to play with. Thresh, now Thresh is a little bit easier. You can definitely put him as a second champ. Thresh is a very good control slash snowball. Once you're able to get all your enough units to die, he can bring out one of your champions from your deck that comes in, and so it's a very satisfying, one of the more, I think, beginner friendly snowball champions in the game. Elise is very linear, but she gives you good access to cards. It is probably the face of the aggressive metagame in Legends of Runeterra. I would say if you really want to learn how to play a classic, easy to use, a lot of her cards are common, that means you can build her deck relatively easy, I would say choose Elise. Misfortune, I think Misfortune is a very good starter to control decks. I think she has a very good identity in being able to deal 1 to all the enemies, and you have to learn how to start managing how to attack and still play like this aggressive kind of smaller units attacking, and they're actually dealing more damage than they should. I think Misfortune would be one of the good starts to that kind of control battle heavy metagame. Twisted Fate, dude, I would say if you want to play a combo deck, Twisted Fate is the deck to play, but I would not suggest it as your first or second, even third champion. He's a very difficult gameplay to begin with, and so I would say choose someone else. Now, Gangplank, I think this is a really good contender for a second champ. Even the first champ, this is one of the first ones where we have that big power, that big snowball effect that Gangplank provides. I don't think that he should be one of the first champions to play because the use of his kegs, which are like things that deal one extra damage when you use stuff, it's a little tough to learn how to use properly, or when to use it on your turn / when to use it as ways to play defensively. I think he's a very versatile champion, but I don't think he should be your first champion to get. Fizz falls kind of like a lesser Teemo. I think he doesn't have that much different play styles. I don't think he can play control that well. I think you can definitely pick another champion before you pick Fizz. However, Fizz is very much in the aggressive combo deck area. So if you like aggressive plays and you want to learn how to do some combos, I think Fizz is the right champion for you. Nautilus. Honestly, Nautilus is unplayable, not because he doesn't have good value. He's a very strong champion, but you really need the exact cards. The bad thing about that is that his main engine is the deep engine. That's what we call it. But you need so many specific cards. A lot of them are epic that it's really hard for you to build the right deck with Nautilus when you're first starting. Quinn. I think Quinn is a very good second champion. I would say Quinn and Misfortune. You can always start with Misfortune, gives you that Bilgewater set. Then you can get Quinn, which gives you that Demacia set. And you right here, these two, you have created a good deck right here. Misfortune and Quinn, right? And that the same thing goes with you can definitely get one of these champions from the first two rows and one of these champions, and you can create a decent deck. Not all the time, but for the most part, these champions kind of have similar synergy when you're first starting off. Sejuani. Now, Sejuani is better than Gangplank in terms of how you play her. I think she has a little bit more variety because you can play her in Frostbites, you can play her by herself, you can play her in a more aggressive deck, you can play her in a more control deck. So I think Sejuani, if you want to play these hard-hitting champions, I think Sejuani is the right one for you. A very hard-hitting, snowbally champion. Sejuani is the perfect one. In fact, I'm going to put her somewhere here. Misfortune, I'm going to put somewhere here. Elise, I'm going to put here. And I'll start kind of changing the order of these. I would definitely say Teemo's probably one of the easier champions. Lee Sin, you got to learn how to play with Lee Sin. It's going to be really hard for you to kind of pick up how you're supposed to play with him because you don't actually play him right away. You have to learn how to do the right thing unless you have enough spells in your hand to keep Lee Sin covered. And at the same time, right now in this meta game, it's very value oriented. So if you're trying to pick up Lee Sin, a lot of things are kind of outpacing him. So I wouldn't recommend getting Lee Sin right now. Swain. Now, if you want to learn how to play control, Swain's the man. I would even say Swain goes here. It might be difficult to first understand how you play him as your first champion, which is why maybe he's gonna be one of the hardest first champions to play with. But I think that he is able to be played in an aggressive deck. I think he snowballs really well. I think he provides a lot of good value in his region. I think he can be champion heavy, but his cards also allow everything to be engine heavy. It's a good way to play control. I think Swain might be one of the easy ones here. And he has an iconic level up animation. I think you definitely want to play him. Vi is one of the more combo champions. You kind of have to learn how to play her, but her playstyle is not too difficult. You want to make sure that you're building up her strength so then she can start slamming into weaker units and taking over the game. I would say Vi goes here. very good second champion. I would even pair Vi with something like a I'm trying to think, maybe a Lux could be good because you get the Demacia stuff, which means Garen can also fit in there, but you can also pair her with Heimerdinger. So I think she's a very good second champion, not necessarily a first champion. Maokai is probably one of the easier cards to play in unplayable because you can actually fit him into two categories, but I still think he's very difficult to play. You got to learn how to discard. You have to learn when to start using your units um, to block, because you can easily get overwhelmed. So I would say Maokai is kind of unplayable, although not like impossible, kind of like Nautilus is. Tom Kench. Now Tom Kench is tough. Tom Kench, even though his playstyle is very linear, it's very hard for a first player to come into the game and learn how to deal damage to their own units and win the game. So I think Tom Kench is a very difficult champion. I wouldn't recommend playing him until you really understand how to play the game. Shyvana, I think there's a very good card. It has very good regen. She gives very good value. She snowballs really, really well. So I would say that if you want to play Snowball, I would say maybe it goes in front of Ezreal. I think this is a very good. I think we're building this to be really good. Trundle, I would say if you want to learn how to play ramp decks, if you want to learn how to do this like late game finishes, Trundle is your guy. I think he has a very good aggressive. You can also play him in control. He has enough cards to kind of do combos with himself. He's a very, very good variety champion. I'm going to put him right here, right next to Sejuani. Lulu gives you control of 2 regions, which is good. She's very aggressive. If you want to learn how to play all or nothing aggression, you should definitely get Lulu. But I'm gonna put her as the easiest second champ for now. Yeah, I think this is looking pretty good. In fact, I'm gonna keep it like this. Zoe, okay, if you want to learn how to play a control deck, a combo deck, I would say Zoe is the girl. I'm gonna put her here, maybe behind Zoe, because she's very versatile. You can play her in a very offensive, but also very control based, with a lot of stuns, with a lot of obliterate. She gives you very good cards. She brings a lot of value into it. A lot of people try to beat her, and so you have to learn how to keep her alive for a while. She pairs very good with a lot of champions. So I would say Zoe is one of the easier ones to learn how to play with. Leona, I think Leona honestly is a very intuitive champion, but I think her playstyle is very slow and you got to learn how to play the cards right. So I'm going to say that she is somewhere around here, somewhere in this hard category. Soraka, I think is a very mid-range second champ. I think that actually Thresh has been kind of falling. I think Thresh should be like somewhere around here, with Shen being right behind. I think Soraka, this one right here, is a very good champion because it learns how to manage and how to keep things alive. She recently got some pretty good buffs in terms of getting a new keyword that helps her out. And so if you like to play very control decks, this one revolves some more about healing your units. If you want to have it more of a deck where you're building your units, it's a little bit snowbally, not too snowbally, but overall it's more of an engine heavy deck, you can use Soraka. She also has, I think, one of the easier win conditions that you can learn how to kind of maneuver if you really like to. Diana, she is a very aggressive champion, and so what I would say with Diana is I think she does what Zoe tries to do, but worse. Only because she has to use Nightfall, and then you have to learn how to manage your mana for that. So because of that, I think I'm gonna put her as a second champ. Honestly, teetering towards hard, just because you have to learn how to use her resources correctly, or else you're kind of stuck. Taric, I think if you want to learn how to play a beefy field, Taric is your boy. I think he does things well. He creates a very good engine that makes things very difficult to kind of win with. Uh, not hard to win with, but hard to win against. So I think you can try to pick up Taric as your second champion. I just thought about it. I just changed my mind. As a second champion, I think he's good. I think I'm gonna put him in front of Thresh. Aurelion Sol. If you want to learn ramp, you pick Aurelion Sol. However, I feel like he is just so tough to learn when you're first starting off. As you can see right here, I think I'm gonna have to put him in the hard category. I think him and Tryndamere kind of fall in the same place where they're really good, but for you to learn how to survive and for you to learn how to play with, uh, yeah, he's kind of tough to learn. I would recommend Zoe over this guy so far. Aphelios, mwah. He got a new buff, so I think he's really good. Because of that, he has so much versatility. He has his moon weapons that are really good. He has a good engine for that. He himself can snowball to be a pretty decent card. He creates cheaper units. I think Aphelios is a very good one if you want to learn how to manage resources and a value. He's a very good intro to learning the value engine in Legends of Runeterra. Riven's a combo deck. I would say Riven falls somewhere in the second champion. I think there's probably other champions that do the combo a little bit better than Riven, but Riven is the strongest version of the combo. So I'm gonna definitely put her, man, somewhere here. I would say that she's right in the middle if you really want to play her. And like I said, this is not in terms of how good they are in the meta, right? This is not how competitive they are, how good their decks are. This is just how easy it is to learn and pick up the keywords and the engine behind these cards, their main units. This is how easy it is to pick up, right? Victor, I think Victor is a little tough because you have to learn how to manage his resources. But at the same time, he does snowball pretty well. You'll start to kind of appreciate how good Victor can snowball. I would definitely say he goes somewhere here in between Taric and Thresh. I think you can definitely get him as a second champion. I think what Victor tries to do, I think Aphelios does a little bit better. And in terms of like getting value for your cards, I think Zoe does a little bit better job. Even Heimerdinger does a little better job than Victor. So I would definitely put him here as your second champ. Nocturne is kind of like Diana. In fact, he's a little bit harder to play because he comes later in the game. You have to learn how to manage, and first of all, you're going to be sacrificing a lot of your units, which makes him hard to play. And because of that, I'm going to put him, he's going like somewhere here. Pike, very linear, very aggressive. I honestly think he is a good contender for building an aggressive playstyle. Kind of difficult to play, so I wouldn't recommend him. Actually, because he's not versatile in playing. Yep, I'm bringing him to hard. He's not that versatile. He's very good in terms of the aggressive playstyle. But man, you really need the you really need the other 37 cards that you're playing with Pike, or else he's not doing that well. And just before we do that, that's the same thing with this guy. They go really well together, but they're just so tough to learn. These two are Rek'Sai and Pike fall in the same thing. They only work well together. Outside of that, it's really hard to play. Jarvan, 4. I think he's a very good second champ. I think his win condition is, you can pair it really well with Braum. Where his condition is that your units have to survive attacks, and so I think it's a very good champion. But as your first champion, I wouldn't recommend. I would recommend trying to get other champions before Jarvan. Lissandra, I think she's a very good snowball champion. I would say she would go here. And in fact, because of that, um, I'm going to move Garen down to being a second champ now. I think he was doing great. But as I keep getting more and more champions, I feel like there are way better champions in the A tier than Garen. Um, so far, this is how it works. Irelia, very linear playstyle. You really need the cards. The good thing is that her cards are very cheap, but you can only really play her in maybe 2 decks, and so I would definitely say she's a little bit harder to learn when you're first starting. I'm gonna put her somewhere in front of Aurelian Soul, somewhere here. You can play with her with a champion that's coming up, which is Azir, or you can play with her with Misfortune, but really Misfortune just has better pairings right now. Malphite, the Rock, I would say he's a very hard. Falls right here with the big boys, where you got to learn how to use the right resources to play with him. You got to learn how to use him defensively and offensively. He's kind of stuck in a weird thing where his thing is just to activate landmarks, which is easy to do in decks. But for some reason, Malphite feels a little too clunky. He takes so much tempo out of you, so you gotta learn how to have like this very good value playstyle in the beginning and then immediately switch into a more snowball at the end, which kind of feels a little tough for Malphite to learn how to play in the very beginning. I think LeBlanc is really good in terms of being a second champion because her playstyle is very linear. However, I don't feel like she has that much flexibility to be here, so I'm gonna put her somewhere around here. And because of that, I'm kind of gonna move Quinn to be somewhere like here. Lucian, sorry Lucian, I'm gonna bring you down. And Gangplank, I'm moving you up somewhere around here. Jarvan, you are not one of the hardest ones here. I would say you fall somewhere here. Jarvan and Shen kind of fit the same second champ slot with like a Braum deck or something like that. So I think somewhere right here is good. Echo, I think Echo has so much potential, and maybe when we get more cards that support him, he would be a good first or second champ. But unfortunately, I think he's one of the easier hard champions. I think he has a good champion heavy and engine heavy thing, but overall, not that great. Azir. I think Azir has pretty decent flexibility, but you really need a lot of good cards to play him. I'm going to put him in... Actually, I'm going to put him as a second champ. I think once you get the ball rolling, I think he does really great, but he doesn't have too much flexibility. But he has a very good like snowball. Like once you get the Sun Disc restored, or once you start getting all these like sand soldiers out, I think you can do a very good aggressive snowball champion here. Now Sivir, I think Sivir is a really good snowball deck. You can practice how to attack with units, attack with these big heavy units, and then when you drop her down, they all share her keywords. So as soon as you drop her down, boom, it's a very, very good satisfying moment when you get Sivir to be here. So because of that, I think she will go somewhere here. And Vlad, dude, Vlad, you're starting to fall down a little bit, dude. If there's another one that does better than Vlad, I'll probably switch him out. But so far, I think these are pretty good champions to start with. Zillion, I think Zillion's a very good, kind of like with Echo, they kind of don't have enough support for you to learn how to play them, and then you have to waste all your jewels and stuff like that to try to get them, and so it gets a little difficult to play with them. Nasus, I think Nasus is one of the easier to play hard champions. I think once you kind of get that snowball rolling, he's just completely dominates the field. I think him and Thresh are very good. If you want, you're like, let's say that you have a team with 2 champions already, you get a 3rd champion just to kind of mix it up a little bit. I would say Thresh with Nasus can be a very good like snowbally deck afterwards, so you can start learning how to play the game. Renekton, I think, does what Nasus does. And Riven. but a little worse than Riven. I would say if you want to learn how to play Renekton, you gotta first get a champion before him. You gotta learn how to attack with him and lose him. You gotta learn how to play vulnerable pretty well. So he falls somewhere there. Not that hard to understand, but um, not that versatile. Now Talia, I think, is a versatile. She does what Malphite does, but better. She creates a lot of value. She has good tempo. She can snowball. I think she's a somewhat very versatile champion to play with. And so with that in mind, we're bumping Vladimir down. Vladimir down would go somewhere here. Akshan. Akshan is one of the more versatile ones. You can play him in control. You can play him in very aggressive plays. You can play him to create value. I think Akshan and Aphelios fit that very versatile plays perfectly. I think if you want to play one of these decks that's a little bit more aggressive and builds value, play Akshan. Kindred. Sorry, my dude, but learning how to keep Kindred alive and learning how to kill certain opponents and stuff is a very tough challenge. Not that tough right now because he's a generally, like, he brings good value once you get the ball rolling, but oh my gosh, is it so hard for you to keep him alive. I would say he goes on hard. Viego does what Kindred wishes he can do, but better. He has very good cards. He's very versatile. He can play aggressive. He can play control. He can, keep up with like the units that, like the ramp decks that can bring out these huge monsters. Viego can be right there. And once he levels up, he can start killing the board very easily. Highly suggest playing Viego as your control. In fact, I'm going to move him here. I'm going to move Swain down maybe here. But I'm putting Viego there. If you want to learn how to play control, you want to learn how to snowball champions, play Viego. Yuumi, very combo heavy. I would say that currently, right now, Yuumi falls somewhere like in the hard. I think playing Yuumi is somewhat difficult to learn how to play. She does have a lot of value and she snowballs well, but I think there's a better snowball champion out there. Poppy has been nerfed so much, but I think that she's a good second champion. Maybe she falls somewhere here. I think she's a good second champion to learn how to play. She has very good offensive and defensive strategies. I think the Bandle City and Demacia is just a generally good region to learn how to play with stats. So I think Poppy goes somewhere there. Kennen, if you want to learn how to play with value, if you want to learn how to recycle mana, I think Kennen's your boy. As a second champ though, I don't think that he's that great in what he does right now. He currently got nerfed, but that's not to say that it's not that he's not fun to play with. I would say, however, that you kind of need to build a specific deck around him, and he's not that versatile, so you definitely can use him as an assist. Not necessarily that good. In fact, I'm gonna move like somewhere like, honestly, somewhere here. He's one of the more like advanced ones that you'll want to play with. Rumble, I think Rumble's a pretty, like, one of the easier second champions. I think learning what to discard is kind of tough to first learn, but once you get the hang of it, he's pretty good to understand. I'm gonna put him here. I think he does what Jinx wants to do, but a little better. Veigar, you want to learn control, you play Veigar. I think he's a second champion because he's not that versatile, and the decks that you do play, you kind of need these specific cards in order for him to do well. Tristana, very good value. She can play aggressive, she can play control, she has man, I would say I'm going to put her in second champ, but she can honestly go in the hard category as well. Gnar, I think Gnar is a good champion in terms of being versatile. You can play it offensively, defensively. He creates a lot of good value by creating Pokesticks. I think he goes into A tier. And we are almost done. We have one more row, so we're almost done. We're going to go by Ziggs really quickly. Man, learning how to play Ziggs offensively is kind of tough. I would put him somewhere around here because you have to learn how to play with units and landmarks, learn how to synergize them well, and I think it's a little tough for first players to learn how to use that. Man, now it's getting so big I can't even fit it on my screen anymore. So we're going to keep it like this. One of the things that is actually pretty good is that you guys can't see unplayable, so that that's kind of the good thing, right? Nami, very very good. She's very versatile, but I don't think that she has the cards in herself for you to learn how to play the game. You have to manage resources very very well, but her versatility is so insane. I think she can be a second champ for you to learn. Galio, I think Galio might be somewhere here. I'm gonna just put him here because I think once you start to snowball him, he does a really great job. He has Demacia, which means that it's a very good way to learn how to play with stats, but overall he isn't that crazy intuitive to learn. Udyr, very good combo deck, very very good combo deck. I'm gonna put him very close to champ as a second champion. I think that once you start learning a little bit more on which stats matter the most and what keywords can help you out and how to clear the board, I think Udyr does a very good job with providing all of that. With that being said, Garen, sorry my boy, you're dropping. You're dropping. Now the more champions I see, the more I see, yeah, Udyr. Yeah, dude, I would rather play this. Ahri. Ahri does what Kennen misses out. She's a good engine. You can learn how to play the game. She plays with a lot of weaker kind of champions that I mean units that get back to your hand, so you can recycle and you can learn how to use that kind of more advanced. I think she's one of the more advanced first champions you can play. Pantheon, I would say if you want to learn how to play a snowball deck, Pantheon is your man. I think it's a little bit tough because you have to learn how to use the resources, but all the resources they do just create really good power, really good value, very good control that I think you can pick up Pantheon pretty well. Scion, I think Scion is one of the ones like with Rumble that work really well together, but you kind of need to learn how to play the game. You got to learn how to discard your cards properly to gain some value. He's not that difficult to learn, but you do definitely need to learn how to play a team first. Caitlyn, I think Caitlyn is a very good start here. I think she does what Ezreal wants to do a little bit better. She has access to flash bombs, which makes it a little bit easier for you to learn how to snowball, and the snowball is a good control mechanism. She isn't necessary, you don't have to draw her to create this engine, but with her it starts ramping up and she benefits a lot from it. Because of all those things that I just said, I think she belongs somewhere even closer here. Yeah, Caitlyn goes somewhere there. Jace is a very good like snowball-y kind of guy. He can be played aggressively, but not that crazy of like support that he has right now. So I'm gonna put him somewhere in between here. Xerath falls in the same place here. You really gotta learn how to play the Shuremans later on. You don't have to focus on them right now. You have to learn how to protect your champions while at the same time learn how to use landmarks offensively and defensively. He's a little tough to learn. And final one, Senna. She does what Veigar does a little better. So I think if you want to learn how to play control, she does a good job, but like not that crazy of a good job. And with this concludes all of the champions that we have. So this is the tier list on how to pick your champion. Easiest champions to learn how to play. Honestly, Teemo is probably the easiest one, followed by Braum, then Lux, then probably Viego, Aphelios, and Akshan. Notice that they are from completely different regions, which shows that each region, even if you're just like one of those people who don't care about how to play the game, you guys just like design, each of these have different designs, each of these have different play styles that I think you can definitely have enough versatility to play 2 or 3 different decks with those champions. These are very good once you kind of learn a little bit more about how the game is. However, these are also very straightforward, very versatile champions that you can learn how to play. Second champions, these are a little bit tougher to understand their mechanics, but generally they have a little bit more versatility in terms of they can combine with each other, they can combine with the people on top. They have very fun interactive ways of playing, and I think these are one of the ones that once you kind of understand the game and you want to start venturing out into what other keywords and decks you can build, these are very good. These are once you want to learn how to play competitive, or once you want to learn how to really manage your resources, learn how to play niche decks, learn how to play value decks, stuff like that. These are the champions, and sadly, these champions right now do not have that much versatility. They are very difficult to play either because of their combos, their innate engines. They have to play the engine part, but at the same time they are the champions that you have to protect no matter what, and so these are very difficult to play on your first run. But that is the tier list on how to play these champions. I hope you guys enjoyed this. This is going to be a huge video, so hopefully my editing skills are on point. If not, we're going to get this hour-long video. Well, hopefully you guys enjoyed this, and I will see you guys next time for more Legends of Runeterra videos. So please, look at how long this took me to make, right? You guys better subscribe, right? This took so long, I gotta go to sleep. So you guys better drop a like and subscribe. So I will see you guys next time, and peace.